And wake up, everybody. Welcome into Redacted on this Tuesday. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris. Thank you for joining us.
And on this show, we cover the stories the mainstream media largely ignores. But what is going on right now with the effusive love of Pam Bondi all over Fox News, talking about the Epstein files, Hannity giving her a platform to come on and basically say, hey, we know we've been sort of slow rolling this, but we just got a truckload of these documents. Yes, we also fired the head of the FBI in New York for sitting on these files. Something doesn't smell right about all of this, and we're going to get to that today on the show.
We're also going to talk about the economy because tariffs have been put in place against China and Canada. And so what does that mean for our economy? The warning signs are there that we may be in for a painful readjustment. What's that going to mean? Does this mean that Trump cannot keep a campaign promise? Are Democrats going to be able to say, hey, we told you so? We're going to study the numbers before we have emotional reactions to egg prices, which I do every week.
That's right. Yeah, you get very eggy. Also, we're going to look at the new Doge findings out today. And was the Biden crime family using USAID money to basically hide their crimes as it relates to Ukraine? We're going to look at all of the new Doge money coming up. Representative Burleson is going to be joining us here a little bit later in the show. So we get to all of that and more. Let us know where you're joining us from in the chat. Nice to see the tens of thousands of you who are tuned in all across Twitch, across YouTube, across Rumble and X today. Great to see all of you guys.
Also, we should let you know that we intend to broadcast live tonight. The president will address Congress tonight. He says he's going to have a no-holds-barred joint session of Congress. Democrats are planning how they are going to protest with some fashion, maybe. A Lady Gaga-like hat. That would really show him. We intend to be here, so join us. We're going to watch that and react to it in real time. What time is that? 9 p.m. Eastern.
9
if
p.m.
you
Eastern
would like to join Redacted to have a reaction. So mark your calendars. We'll be back later today.
All right. We want to get to Kyle Seraphin in a moment here, former FBI whistleblower on this Pam Bondi story and the Epstein files. But first, this didn't take long. Take away their military funding and weapons in Ukraine, and they back down. Imagine doing that to Israel. Oh, sorry. That's not going to happen. I love the hypocrisy, though, in Washington, D.C. But with Ukraine, of course, it did happen. That was an easy one. That's a layup. President Trump has officially cut off all aid to Ukraine. And then just like clockwork, Zelensky crawls back and says he's ready for peace. That's amazing how all of this works. Here's his post on X. I would like to reiterate Ukraine's commitment to peace. When did you iterate that? Why are you reiterating it? When did you iterate that in the first place? I don't remember you ever iterating that.
That's not a redundancy, because when President Trump invited you to speak about peace, you only mentioned weapons.
Yeah, I don't remember any iteration of this. Anyway, he's going to reiterate peace. None of us wants an endless war. Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible to bring lasting peace closer, blah, 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 on and on and on. He says, we really do value how much America has done to help Ukraine maintain its sovereignty. And then he repeats a line that Trump said to him the other day. And we remember the moment when things changed, when President Trump provided Ukraine with javelins. We are grateful for this. Literally took a line right out of President Trump, who repeated himself 5 times about the javelins. Okay. Anyway, according to Reuters, about an hour ago, before we started the show, President Trump Zelensky planned to sign the Ukrainian mineral deal today. It might be happening as we speak. And then Trump is going to announce that minerals deal tonight during his congressional address tonight.
But it does not seem that will happen in person.
No.
Again, Marco Rubio, after that confrontation in the White House, said, look, we didn't even need to do this. We offered the Ukrainians to do this on paper. Ever heard of DocuSign? Ever heard of fax it back? Like, we don't actually have to do this in person.
We don't need you.
And in fact, they shouldn't. Yeah, right? I think we all can agree.
We don't need him flying back to the United States on our tax dollars. But meanwhile, so all of this is happening. Oh, yeah, we really want peace. We're committed to peace. New video overnight emerging, showing once again what J.D. Vance called out the other day, Ukraine's conscription service. I don't know if you guys have ever hired these guys. They come and they do a lot of moving for you. They'll just come to your town. If they've got somebody who they want to join the front lines, they'll pick them up, throw them in a van, and they'll bring them right to a conscription office and then send them right to the front lines, right back into the meat grinder so that these individuals can be killed in 2 weeks. That's the service that they provide young Ukrainian men, and all the way up to 60 years old now in Ukraine. That's a fabulous service that democracy provides to you.
Do you have to pay extra for those back of the head slaps?
It's better than an Uber ride.
Those are free.
It's really fantastic.
Those are free.
It's
free.
free.
And if you get one, you can get another one for free too. It's a good deal.
And if you run away, you get an extra, right? It's really
none of those men seem to be resisting. They are resigned to their fate. So why do you need to be slapping them? Maybe they're saying something they don't like.
Let them know who's in charge. You're going to the front lines. We need more meat for the meat grinder. That's democracy in action in Ukraine. Let's put an end to that.
No, Clayton, that's what liberals mean when they say they stand with Ukraine. They like that.
Oh, okay. I just want to be sure about that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Epstein files, right? Where are the JFK files? Where are the Epstein files? Where are the UFO files? Where are all the files? Attorney General Pam Bondi was asked this question last night on Hannity because you remember that whole weird thing last week where a lot of binders were handed out of all publicly available information. These binders were handed out to influencers who got invited to the White House, and then they held up the binders and took a photo op and all of that. Very bizarre set of circumstances. It was a flop, of course. It didn't really make any sense. Well, here was Pam Bondi last night explaining exactly where these FBI files have been held in New York and what she's now doing with the thousands of pages. Watch.
We all did. And the FBI handed over a couple hundred pages of documents. But, Sean, I gave them a deadline of Friday at 8 a.m. to get us everything. And a source had told me where the documents were being kept. Southern District of New York, shock. So we got them all by, hopefully all of them, Friday at 8 a.m., thousands of pages of documents. I have the FBI going through them, and Cash is also, now that we have Cash here, it's a game changer, of course, and Cash is going to, Director Patel is going to get us a detailed report as to why the FBI withheld all of those documents.
Okay.
So, okay, lots of questions here. Let's ask Kyle Seraphin, former FBI whistleblower, head of the host of the Kyle Seraphin Show, joins us today from Texas. And I know, Kyle, you've been pretty, I don't say upset, but kind of confused as well. And watching all of this unfold, she says a source tells her that these are being held in New York. First of all, just what do you make of that piece of it? And we'll dive a little bit deeper here.
Yeah, the language is really concerning. You have sources in an agency that works for you. How does that work out exactly? Like, they work for you. They're an indirect report. I mean, I understand that people don't understand what it is that we're talking about when we deal with the FBI and what the DOJ is, but the DOJ, the Department of Justice, is the cabinet level department, right? And one of the sub agencies is called the FBI. So everybody in the FBI theoretically rolls up to the head of the DOJ, which is the Attorney General. We also just heard her say, we asked where the files were, and they said that they were at the Southern District of New York. And then she rolls her eyes like, of course. The Southern District of New York works for the Attorney General. What are we talking about here? Like, did they walk in there? And this is what I'm worried about. I'm worried about that people got into this fight and they didn't realize what they were getting into. And I'm seeing some signs of that at the FBI as well. I've been screaming this from my little platform that I've got. We're talking about the first battle in a serious war. And the war is the same way that we took, let's say, Afghanistan. You don't have to agree with why we did it, but the mechanism by which you take a country, you land a landing force of some kind. You have to gather and make a foothold so that you can operate out of that base. And then you charge forward and seize ground. You do it as quickly as possible. And then you got to hold it. Okay. What we're seeing is like the beach landing. And I used this analogy this morning, the beach landing on the FBI, which is foreign territory. It is a captured, ideologically sort of self-interested, management-run, corrupted cesspool. There's all kinds of problems there. There's all kinds of great agents there, too, that want to be on your team. But you got to link up with those friendlies. You got to get them in a place where they know that they can actually get information up and they can be elevated into positions of responsibility. And you got to get rid of the rot that is all of this management culture that's terrible. And we're not seeing it. It's just not happening. Like, the roadmap should have been so clear that on day one, in fact, on day -8, 8 days before Kash Patel showed up, we should have had things in play. And part of the reason that they do a transition team is so that when the Attorney General shows up, it's full speed ahead. You start making it your agency. And people have been coming at me on social media saying, well, give her some time. She's only been there 2 weeks. If you didn't walk in with some day 1, day 2, day 3 priorities of who needed to be axed, who needed to be eliminated, and what your game plan was to seize control of a hostile agency, you already failed. So 2 weeks in, if we're not figuring this stuff out, why are you on Sean Hannity? Like, what are you doing on Fox News?
Right.
But we have copious evidence of sabotage inside the FBI. We have this letter from James Dennehy, who now was ousted as the head of that office, saying, hey, this is our big battle. Everyone dig in. So what she's trying to lay out for us is that there have been saboteurs and she's having to work around it. And so what you're saying is there will always be saboteurs. There has to have been a plan in place for this.
There should have been.
Because otherwise we've been overpromised and underdelivered. Is that what you're saying?
Here's the other thing. Yeah, Natalie. So there's no paper files. I mean, you can have paper files and that's great. I don't know why you want to. This is 2025. If anybody thinks that the FBI is transmitting documents via paper files and they're carrying boxes in to the Southern District of New York to be able to do prosecutions, they've lost their mind. You burn off DVDs like everybody else does. All of the files were held at the FBI's field office in New York, which means they were accessible in Washington, D.C. too. It's a system called Sentinel. That's just how this works. All of the FBI's case files, and it doesn't matter how sensitive they are. They've got a top secret enclave, they've got a secret enclave, and they've got an unclass enclave. So there are 3 levels of computers. I used to have 3 different terminals on my desk with 3 different sets of monitors. It's very inefficient, but that's what you got. You can access them from anywhere as long as you have permissions to do so. So there's no reason why the senior members of the FBI couldn't access it from anywhere. You don't have to physically be in New York. The only thing that would physically be there is the actual physical evidence. And why would you be taking that over to Main Justice? There's no real reason, because you're going to have pictures, you're going to have descriptions, you're going to have what the catalog of exactly what was collected, most of which is not going to be in the public sphere and shouldn't be if they're going to do prosecutions. So this is a digital age. There's no trucks full of paperwork. That's nonsense. Like they're snowing us with this visual that's ridiculous.
And then it comes back to what you pointed out, the source, right? I learned from a source that they're being held in New York. It doesn't make any sense. Like that, it doesn't pass the smell test. Another thing that doesn't pass the smell test to me was when she said, this is a national security issue. National security. This is a child trafficking operation, pedophile network. From what I know, what national security issues? I mean, we know that Epstein was an FBI informant at one point. Is it ties to Mossad, like a foreign intelligence service, Israel?
That's what we've been hearing for a long time. Yeah, I don't have evidence of it directly, and obviously I haven't reviewed any more files than anybody else has publicly because I wasn't on this case. But I hear the same things you do, and it makes sense that there were various different Israeli connections. So whether Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were working on behalf of the Israelis or other affiliated, it's very possible that he was working on behalf of more than one, or that, people, once you start getting leveraged at that level and you have that kind of money, I got friends that have a lot of money. When you have 7- and 8-figure net worth, then you start realizing that people who have a lot of money might come talk to you from the intelligence agencies. They do it domestically in the United States. There's an entire group of the FBI that goes out and recruits sources that have a lot of money that travel in certain spheres. If you go internationally, then there's a certain group that will come out called National Resource. They'll come from the CIA. If you start traveling a lot just domestically and you travel in the spheres of, let's say, computers and computer science and computer software, then you might have people coming in from the various different cybersecurity organizations, to include CISA or FBI. So yeah, you're going to have, connections. What that means specifically, or how compromised somebody is, or whether or not they're working on behalf of, or whether they've been co-opted into doing this work. That's what the Chinese will do. They'll lean on people. So that's a technique that can be done. And Israel's kind of an interesting animal, because although they are an ally of the United States, in many ways, they work as an allied force. They're also kind of a frenemy, if we're being real honest about it. There are aspects of Israel, I want to play real fairly here, that is sort of predatory, and they take things from the United States, and the U.S. kind of tolerates it as and it's not because the U.S. is necessarily controlled by Israel. It's because our interests align enough times that they kind of are like, hey, get out of the cookie jar sometimes. So you'll actually have cases that are counterintelligence against the Israelis at the same time as they'll be working actively as sources, or they'll be working in a military sense on behalf of U.S. interest. So that's kind of a mess to begin with. But yeah, are there national security interests? I thought that was baked into the cake. Like, how do you walk into DOJ? If I know that and you know that, how does she not know that on day one, like I said, or day 8, 8 times before she even shows up? This should have been the discussion that was had prior to actually being nominated, one would think, because I know how these nominations work. You get asked, what's your plan? Who's your team? What's your roadmap look like? What's your battle plan to be able to walk into this agency and make it not weaponized? And if we're being really clear, there are probably like 3 incredibly dangerous parts of the federal government right now. One of them is the IRS, because they have the ability to take your money and they have the ability to lock you up if you don't play along. And so they've been weaponized before. And the other one is DOJ, which actually does the prosecution of it. And by extension, the FBI is the teeth in the dog of the DOJ. If there was not a strong plan to come in and make that thing politically neutral, would be the best case scenario, or just neutered altogether and defanged, then this is all for naught. Everything else is, USAID and talking about being able to get rid of government waste. That's all nice. I want government to be small as possible, but I also want the people that can actually come into your door and kill you to be on the right track where they're actually looking at the Constitution and not playing winners and losers in politics, which is what we saw for the last 4 years.
So what can they do to regain our trust at this point? We're not going to get an unredacted document dump. Clearly.
Sure.
Could they fire the people who were hiding documents from senior officials?
Yeah, all of them.
Okay.
They all need to go.
Right. That's one thing. And then what? Because they're saying we're going to get this in piecemeal. What do you think how can they regain our trust at this point? And, what is the best benefit of the doubt that we can offer that, whoa, this was overwhelming and they overpromised and didn't know what they were getting themselves into?
Yeah, I don't need documents. And honestly, neither do you. What you want to see indictments, which means they presented evidence to a grand jury and said there's enough information here to go out and cause an arrest. We want to see those next. And then we want to see prosecutions carried on. And then we'd like to see convictions. So build solid cases and put people in jail that did something really evil, like abuse children. And if they happen to be a national security threat as well, charge them there or make deals with them to roll up further as you need to. And then use statecraft if that's required because we're dealing with nation state actors. So be it. Like Trump is not scared of pressuring people. He's not scared of pulling funding. He's not scared of saying things that other people are really kind of worried about. He can be a bull in the china shop. And what's the cost? He's not going to get another term. This is his term. So we've seen it kind of on one side. And I've heard other people say, how come they haven't reinstated guys like Kyle? I don't necessarily want to be reinstated. I actually don't want to be reinstated. I don't want to work for the FBI anymore. I like doing what I do. This is way more fun. But I do want to see guys that want to go back to work there. Like if you're a whistleblower and you got removed, I just got 50 pages of documents before we went live from the DOJ saying that they've looked at my equal opportunity employment complaint. And in 50 pages, they told me that all 13 of the retaliations that they acknowledged were potentially retaliatory, none of them actually had any evidence that I was retaliated against. And it was given to me by a DOJ contractor. So look, it's totally unfair what is done. I'd like to see some corrections. Bring in the people that know where the bodies are. And for anybody that says, well, it's politics and there's a backlash, because that's what I've been hearing. Well, we can't bring on my buddy Garrett O'Boyle has been 29 months with no pay. The FBI removed him for something that I did. And I have acknowledged publicly that I did. And so did the company that I went to. I went to Project Veritas in May of 2022, and I exposed that the FBI was actually lying and that the Southern District of New York was lying in federal court to a judge and they were presenting statements that were factually false. And when they did that, they got slapped, and that case went away simply because of what I did. And that's fine. I'll take the heat for that. And, I don't want to go back. But my buddy didn't do it, and they removed him. And the fact that they're not putting him back in, it's not about political backlash. They just named Dan Bongino to be the number 2 in the FBI. There is no more politically aggressive move than that, based on all the things that Dan has said. So you can't tell me that they're worried about hurting people's feelings. You need to bring people in that know what the roadmap looks like. If you were going to go into a foreign country and try to stage a coup, the first thing that our special forces guys do, they do really good map recon, they look at the satellite imagery, and they get a local guide. They co-opt somebody that's a friendly to help work, help them go around and find out where to go. You need a tour guide to the FBI. And it can't be some retired guy that left in 2016 and never saw the weaponization. It's got to be someone that left in 21, 22, 23 that saw the ugly end of this thing, because the default position for most people inside the FBI, and DOJ is the same way, by the way, most people leave there and feel really good about what they did. You got to find people that are a little bit disgruntled and think, hey, this agency was something and it is not that thing anymore. And I'd like to see it return to an apolitical, if possible. It's been a long time since it's been that way, but let's see it actually honestly treated like they give a darn about the Constitution. and that's the guiding press. It doesn't need to be partisan, but that's what we were promised. And so if you want to go ahead and give me what we were promised an apolitical DOJ that's going to swing back aggressively towards protecting American civil liberties. By the way, the left should also cheer for that. They shouldn't want to see this thing swing back and forth every election cycle.
No, we need a tour guide through the cesspool. And by the way, we would not want you to go back to the FBI. We love you where you are because you're a voice of reason in this craziness right now. So we'll get, like I say, Pam Bondi is a friend. I consider her a friend. But again, this smells weird, and we're going to call it out. And we want answers right now. And I think the American people are sick and tired of this.
I hadn't thought of it that simply. Indictments. Indict the people who hurt children and young girls. Young boys.
No more binders with influence. No more binders with influencers.
Don't give me or those.
Well, think about this.
Those pink
think about any
call me back pads. I don't want to see those anymore. We've seen them.
Think about any major criminal case that's been done. you don't try it in the court of public opinion. They do a little bit. They do some messaging. But at the end of the day, you don't need to actually see the evidence. You'll see it when they go to trial. That's what you should be geared toward. And you don't want to reveal it before it's supposed to be done. There's a process. That process, by the way, is that the FBI builds the case, then they bring discovery over to the attorneys, and the attorneys get it, and that means the FBI didn't lose their only copy of it. So the idea that it was only at the Southern District of New York, when I heard her say that, she was like, there were hundreds of pages. I was like, wait, where are the files? I had this view of Zoolander. You remember when the two guys are the two male models? You got Owen Wilson and you got Ben Stiller, and they're like, they're in. Yeah, the files are in the computer. It's so simple. They're always in the computer. That's where they keep the files.
They're always there.
Come on.
They're digital files.
Don't try to screw with me. The system is called Sentinel. For everybody who wants to know, it's called Sentinel. That's where you keep your case files. That's where you build the files in the FBI. I guarantee they're still there. And there should be some spin-off cases. Both of you guys should realize that. If there was one major person, we all saw what happened in January 6th. They spun off a ton of cases based on one event. They arrested Epstein. They were charging him. They arrested a co-conspirator. How many others should be out there? There should be cases wherever those people live all around the United States. They're all accessible from Washington, D.C. and from New York City and from any other FBI field office.
Yeah. So I think that, Fox News should be asking her, how big is your legal team? You're going to need a lot of litigants, right? So that's where we need to go. Okay, so they didn't give me the chance to ask those questions.
They should put an entire task force on this, honest to God. And I made this recommendation, I think on I might have said this at Benny Johnson's show, but at the end of the day, you could take all of those case files and you could sequester them on a hard system outside of the major urban areas. That's probably a good idea. Hire on some seasoned investigators that have no instance of bias, that probably don't pay attention to the news. And there's plenty of them, by the way. There's a lot of that. Get some attorneys that have been there for a while, that have showed that they are willing to play ball and they're willing to prosecute people on the left and the right. It has nothing to do with that. And make sure that these people are financially solvent so they can't be blackmailed or extorted and they can't have anybody come after them, because that's a real problem. There's a lot of people in the federal government that don't have a lot of money. They don't know how to figure out money. And so they're vulnerable in that way, even if they're not supposed to be. And you get those people, and I don't know where you put them. Maybe Pocatello, Idaho. There's a place there. You could move them to anywhere. You could put them in Billings, Montana. There's actually a big facility there as well. Move them somewhere. Put them in West Virginia. Put them out in Winchester. Give them a space to operate where nobody's going to screw with them, and they can do only this, and relieve them of all the administrative duties of being an agent. Get rid of the virtual academies and the stupid trainings and the DEI stuff, or whatever we're calling it today, that they're supposed to be up to date on, and the human resources nonsense. Get rid of it. And let these people focus on doing this job only until it's done, like a special counsel's office, but it would just be a special task force for Epstein. And it wouldn't be that hard to do. And there's public support on the left and the right behind that.
Yeah. Kyle Seraphin, thank you so much for joining us. This is a really great analysis because you know that of which you speak. Thank you so much for coming on Redacted and offering us your time.
And check out the Kyle Seraphin Show. Always great. Kyle, great to see you, my friend. Thank you so much for your insights.
Good seeing both of you.
Thanks, Kyle.
All right, coming up, we're going to talk about the economy. Is this an under-promise, over-deliver? Other way. What under-promise, under-deliver, over-promise? That is Trump's campaign promise going wrong to revitalize the economy, or are we in a correction period? We're going to speak to one of our favorite economists, Peter St. Onge, in just a second. Before we do that, we want to remind you that Redacted is brought to you by Ramp, because if you are in the throes of your finances because it's tax time, well, think of this. At this time next year, if you use Ramp, it will not be painful because you'll have beautiful spreadsheets and summaries like you see on your screen there. Doesn't have to be that way if you're using great financial software, which Ramp is. Ramp will help you take all the chaos, receipts, freelancer invoice, subscription nobody signed up for, and take care of that all in one place. In fact, one CFO calls it's like hiring a full-time employee just for expense management, only easier. So you can switch to Ramp and sleep better at night instead of, manually logging your receipts, all of that stuff. Ramp also gives you company cards, gives you access to company spend, and you can set limits and see who's spending what. So don't wait. Switch now. Go to ramp.com/redacted. You can get $250 when you join Ramp. Again, one more time, that's ramp.com/redacted. Get $250. It's a member of the FDIC. Terms and conditions apply.
Well, those tariffs just went into place, and boy, Democrats all read from the same script this afternoon. They all published the same video reading off of the same script. 22 of them read the exact same damn thing and posted it on social media about how upset they are about tariffs and about what's about to happen under Donald Trump. Watch this.
When I win, I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one.
That ain't true. That's what you just heard. Since day one of Donald Trump's presidency, prices are not down, they're up. Inflation is getting worse, not better. The prices of groceries, gas, housing.
Well, they're so organic with their responses, right? 22, that was just 3 of them. Watching all 22 of them is even more painful than that.
Well, is that the script, the messaging that Democrats have said we're going to be better at? And do they have a point that prices are not down in 5 weeks of the Trump presidency? Well, Peter St. Onge joins us today. Now, in a recent video, he said that what we're experiencing is not necessarily flagging distress. It's flagging that the country is healing. So can you explain that? Thanks for coming back on Redacted.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on. And yeah, that was creepy. You remember during COVID, the whole "our democracy is in danger" thing. This is just totally
the same video, the same script, exactly.
I don't know who's doing their PR, but I guess when the money is top down, the messaging is too. Right. So the media, we always knew that they were going to pounce on Trump as soon as he comes into office. They've been playing this game. You know, the sort of the big picture here is that under Joe Biden, we were headed into stagflation. We had a lot of bad numbers on both jobs and inflation and growth. And that does not change, alas, in 12 hours, right? We have a 350 million person country. It's long known in economics that there is a very long lag. Right. So inflation, it actually tends to be 12 to 18 months. For example, if the Fed cranks up rates or cranks them down, you've got a pretty long lag. A lot of these things have a long lag. And so the question is really, is he doing the right things that are going to bring inflation down over time? And there, the biggest questions are going to be government spending, which I think by all accounts, the Democrats are upset that he's pushing so hard on that to get DOGE cuts, to get war spending down. And then the other question is whether we are growing the economy. Now, we know from Trump's first term that he's hitting all the right points on the economy, which are getting rid of stupid regulations, government mandates, lowering tax rates. All of those are, I mean, this is the 200-year recipe for an economy since Adam Smith was at peace, easy taxes, and a tolerable administration of justice from the wealth of nations. These are long, long settled. He is absolutely doing the right things for the economy. The big question mark for me is whether he's going to be able to actually cut government spending, because so far the Republicans in Congress look like they want to just gobble it all up. Some of that gobbling is probably useful, things like deporting low-skilled migrants who commit crimes. Other bits of it, though, you know, you've got Lindsey Graham, of course, pushing to increase government or military spending, which seems absurd when we're trying to wind down a number of wars. We already spend way too much. You know, Trump's been talking about this, how we spend so much to protect Europe. And so it seems a bit nuts to be increasing military spending. So that's really the big question here, I think, is whether the Republicans in Congress can actually grow a spine and appreciate the fact that 90+% of their voters are behind Trump on government spending. They want the garbage cut. They don't just want it rerouted into something else.
Yeah, instead of just voting on things that, will promise a future growth, which is what Thomas Massey and others have been saying. He's voting no for the continuing resolution and so forth to try to stop this massive spending. Republicans seem to be going right back to where they were. Free Spirit in our chat pointed out, said, Trump told us while campaigning that it would take 12 to 18 months to turn things around. He said it repeatedly, I think, about inflation, and he's been handed a giant crap sandwich by the Biden administration, the amount of spending. So what about tariffs, though? So this is the sort of the salve on the wound right now. We're going to put these 25% tariffs. We saw now the reciprocal tariffs. We see China firing back. Mexico, Canada is saying we're in a trade war now. All hell is breaking loose. Will these tariffs work?
So the question is what you're trying to do with the tariffs. And if you are trying to get other countries to end their wicked ways and stop blocking American imports, they'll absolutely work. And the reason is that we have an enormous amount of leverage. Generally speaking, trade with the US for other countries is a much, much bigger part of their economy. So, for example, exporting to Canada is something like 1 or 2% of our economy. Exporting to Mexico, also 1-2%. On the flip side, about 1/5 of Canada's economy is exporting to us. 1/3 of Mexico's economy is exporting to us. So simply on trade, we can make these countries dance. We could make Justin Trudeau dress up any way we want. The other part of course, is the military. We're seeing that in Europe right now, where we protect them for free at the cost of hundreds of billions of dollars. Trump has mentioned this about Canada. You know, that if Canada can't pay its own bills for its defense, maybe it should just be the 51st state. We have enormous leverage on these countries. I think what's shocking is that we've had that leverage for 80 years and we run around shining everybody's shoes. You know, so if he's using it for leverage, 100% it'll work. We've already seen it with Canada and Mexico. They're probably right now racking their brains for nice things they can do for America to try to get Trump to delay the current tariffs. The big one here, what I'm calling the nuclear option, is the reciprocal tariffs. And those are scheduled to start on April 2nd. And the way that those work is that we tally up what these other countries, not just the tariffs, but the non-tariff barriers that they put on us. For example, Europe blocks our imports because they have their own FDA and they say our medical equipment is not safe, which we are the world leader in medical equipment. You know, they put on green rules and things like this. So the idea is that you tally up all of those barriers and you come up with a number and then you put that number on their exports. That's going to be the big one because that's going to go after the barriers that our exporters face in Europe, in Japan, in Korea, which have not yet been on the menu, Australia, India. So that's really going to be the big one. So if he's using it as leverage, yes, it's going to work. The next question is he actually going to succeed in his long game of bringing production back to America? And there, the key parts are going to be, if you lower taxes, business taxes especially, and if you lower these stupid mandates and regulations that have been piled on, there's hundreds of thousands of these, and they're generally bought by lobbyists. So if you get rid of those, it genuinely becomes attractive to produce in America. Now, if you're producing in China, you face low taxes. The Chinese government kind of looks the other way on a lot of regulations. The problem, though, is that China is a very difficult place to locate in. So, you know, they harass you. I joke that it's sort of like dating a stripper. In normal times, it's good, but when it's bad, it's bad. So a lot of these countries are interested, or a lot of these companies are interested in coming back to the U.S. if they have that additional push from taxes and regulations.
Now, I was
Peter
reading this.
Not only an economist, an expert on dating strippers.
We won't ask how you know that. Yeah. Field work. I was reading this 100-year agreement between Ukraine and the UK, and that seems to be a doubling down of, we want none of this. We want all green policies. We want to stop every business progress with DEI initiatives. We want always consultants in the middle. If there's a way to grow your economy, we're going to stop that and tell you why it's not green and not let you do that. That is basically what we did during the Biden administration, and Europe is saying more of this, please. So basically, they are stuck in quicksand. Do you see it that way?
Absolutely. I think Europe is doomed at this point. I mean, thank God they want to take on Ukraine, not our circus, not our monkey. They are doing everything that Biden was doing, and they've been doing it for a lot longer than we have. So, you know, we have a canary in the coal mine. You look at Germany, for example. Traditionally, Germany has been the powerhouse of Europe. It's been the engine that runs the whole thing. German taxpayers were really floating all the rest of them. And Germany is just collapsing. The industrial base is collapsing. Companies are fleeing Germany. They're in a state of panic now because of what Trump is doing. So if Trump is bringing down business taxes, he's bringing down regulations, he's not forcing them to use expensive green energy, Germany is going to hollow out. So, you know, the sort of playbook of socialism for hundreds of years has been first you wreck the economy, people get angry, and so then you go to war. And the war distracts the people. Every time it's the same script. That's exactly where Europe is headed. Now, fortunately, a lot of these countries have elections coming up and the populists are surging. We saw that in Romania, where the European Union actually canceled an election, which is pretty shocking. This is not your grandfather's Europe, or maybe it is your grandfather's Europe. Yeah. And what happened there in Romania is that after they canceled the elections, the populists actually doubled in support. So he's now got over 50% of support. And this is when they have, they have presidential elections with like people in them. So I think it's backfiring. So a lot of people in Europe are getting upset. You look at what just happened in the German election where the populists surged, they doubled their vote share. They're now the second largest party. Of course, they're being quarantined. They're being shut out because none of them want to deal with the issues of immigration, of slowing economy, of green energy on this stupid Ukraine war. But I really think that Europe is headed into some hard times here.
Peter St. Onge, an expert in many things. Always great to have you here on the show. We're going to be watching. We're going to see what the president says tonight during this congressional speech for President Trump on the economy and the minerals deal with Ukraine and what this means for Canada and Mexico as well. Peter, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us, as always.
Thanks for having me on.
Our pleasure. All right, we've got more news to get to. In fact, we're going to talk about Canada. Maxime Bernier is going to be joining us because why is Trudeau aligning himself so closely with Europe? Anytime there's something that Trudeau can insert himself into, he loves to do that. So he loves to show. He wants to align with European leaders
about war. I'll be there.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds
you're
great.
The leader of Canada. That's okay. Can I still come?
Can I still show up? Can I come over there too? And of course, he wants to fund the Ukraine war endlessly in Canada to the tune of $20 billion, but keep it going, keep that pipeline open. So we're going to talk with Maxime in just a second. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at Bunker Life, because Bunker has been a great sponsor for Redacted. They are having tremendous growth right now, and I want to tell you about them today. High net worth families, law enforcement agents, professional athletes, tactical response trainers trust Bunker to protect their lives from surveillance, cyber criminals, and other threats. Join them, and here's what you get. Bunker is an uncompromised private messenger together with a password manager, secure vault, notes that work seamlessly together. They have a password manager, notes, all of it in one. And it works in over 130 countries. Bunker customers enjoy peace of mind, travel with greater ease, and more energy to focus on what matters most. So download Bunker now from the App Store, Play Store, or visit their website. Just go to bunker.life and use the code REDACTED to get 25% off. Live life to the fullest. Protect what matters most. Download Bunker today, bunker.life, and get 25% off when you use the code REDACTED at checkout. All right, good to see everyone today. Where are you guys joining us from in the chat room? Let us know. And by the way, please subscribe. It's free to subscribe to the tens of thousands of you watching right now. Just hit that subscribe button. And by the way, tonight we will be back here live doing a special coverage of President Trump's speech tonight before Congress. There's a number of Democrats who've said they're not showing up. They've got better things to do with their time in protest. So we're going to cover that live tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern time right here on the channel. All right, let's talk about Canada now, shall we? Justin Trudeau seems hell-bent on destroying Canada. It's his favorite pastime, forcing Canadians to fund a pointless war in Ukraine. He confirms that Canada has sent $20 billion to Ukraine already and is ready to send more. Watch.
We've also invested close to $20 billion in supports for Ukraine, military, economic, and other. And we're going to continue to be there to support Ukraine.
Yeah, he will be. What about troops on the ground? Should Canada start sending young men there to die more than have already? I mean, there's been plenty of Canadian mercenaries we know probably already killed, American mercenaries, French mercenaries, Polish mercenaries. But will he send Canadian men there to die, young men? Watch.
Prime Minister Starmer said specifically it will mean UK boots on the ground and planes in the air. From your answer, I am taking that will not mean Canadian boots on the ground. Is that, just to finish, is that the case, or are you considering Canadian boots on the ground in the form of peacekeepers down the road?
Every step of the way, Canada has looked at the ways it can best help. And as I've said a few days ago, everything's on the table. We know that the Canadian military has ways that it can contribute. We're not going to get ahead of the discussions on how to keep a peace that isn't yet in place. But Canada will be there and is open to doing what is necessary, but those will be decisions taken in the coming years.
Yeah, so more money and more weapons heading there. Natalie had to step out, but I'm going to interview now. Maxime Bernier is a leader of the People's Party of Canada and joins us now to comment about this. So, Maxime, great to see you. Welcome back to the show. So, not ruling out boots on the ground, More money to Ukraine. This sounds exactly like what the Canadian people want, right?
Yes, and he said also, we will decide for the boots on the ground in coming years. So for him, this war must go on, must go on. Like you said, we spend, not invest, but spend $20 billion, money that we don't have. We have a deficit of 62, billion dollars. So he does not understand the reality. The reality is, the only adult in the room is President Trump. We must have a peace over there, and the conditions are out there. Ukraine must be neutral, no troops, European or Canadian troops in Ukraine, and the Russia will keep Crimea and Donbass, and that's it. The deal is on the table, and the history of our country is to promote peace and peacekeeping. So he must be with Trump on that, and that will be great for Europe. That would be great for our country. We don't have to spend more money over there. Now, what I'm understanding is when Trudeau is saying we are with Ukraine, is saying we are with the destruction of Ukraine.
Right. Yes, that's absolutely the case. I mean, so he's been aligning himself with these European leaders. He was in Kiev, I think, a week or so ago. He showed up there on the train. He's glad-handing with Zelensky and all of those guys, giving a big hug to Zelensky. Then he's hanging out with the European leaders, aligning himself with Europe. This seems to be the pattern of the Liberal Party. But Pierre Poilievre also standing with Ukraine. There doesn't seem to be much daylight at all between Pierre Poilievre and Justin Trudeau on the question of Ukraine. Am I wrong about that?
You're absolutely right. And it is why Pierre Poilievre is losing a lot of support in the polls in Canada right now, because he is like Trudeau, and people will prefer to vote for the real liberals instead of the fake one with Pierre Poilievre. So on Ukraine is go and is out there speaking about, us being more involved in that war. And he's fighting Trump on that, like Trudeau. So on a lot of issues, Poilievre, the Conservatives, are like the Liberals, and that's why I said long time ago that they are conservative in name only in Canada. We don't have this Conservative Party is morally and intellectually corrupt, and that's why we, the People's Party, at the next election, I can tell you, we are in it to win it, and we'll see what will happen.
Well, right now there seems to be a trade war. Prime Minister Trudeau was sort of given an ultimatum by President Trump. Hey, stop the flow of fentanyl into the United States, or we're going to put these 25% tariffs on your country. You export quite a bit to the United States, and we don't need you to be doing that. Canada has massive tariffs, like we talked about, dairy and other things, cheeses, 300% tariffs on United States agriculture and cheeses and dairy coming into Canada. So huge prices on that. This trade war seems to be happening. Trudeau had an opportunity to stop the flow of fentanyl into the United States. Did he even do anything at all to try to stop the flow of fentanyl into the U.S.?
He started a little bit a couple of weeks ago, but it's not enough. He must be more serious about that and reinvest in our own national defense. He did say that he will invest more than $2 billion to protect our borders, but we need to see that as soon as possible. So my understanding with President Trump, he wants to reopen the free trade agreement right now, not waiting until 2026, but now. So let's tell him, President Trump, you don't like the deal that we have with you. Let's reopen that deal and put everything on the table. Yes, the dairy cartel and also the automobile sector, put everything on the table and have real negotiation. Now, Poilievre and Trudeau, again, they are on the same on that. They want to be sure that Canadians will pay more taxes, because today Trudeau did impose 25% tariffs on a lot of goods that are coming from the US. That is a tax on Canadians. And I'm the only politician who's saying enough is enough. We are paying a lot of taxes. But no, they want to impose more taxes on us. The reality is we must not do that. Just take our time, go in Washington, have the discussion with Trump, reopen the free trade agreement, and, not imposing more tariffs on us. What they're doing, they are, our economy will be in a recession because of that. And more people don't understand that we don't have a leader that will fight for our country. And the way to fight for our country is not to do retaliation measures like they're doing right now.
I speak to quite a few Canadians who tell me the same thing. They cannot believe what they've seen, the destruction of their country under Justin Trudeau in just the past couple of years. What they have done, what this man has done is unbelievable. And just when I think he can't do any more damage, the guy resigns a few weeks ago, says he's going to resign. He managed to do even more damage a few weeks after that. Unbelievable. Maxime Bernier, thank you for joining us from Montreal, Canada. We're watching this very, very closely as Justin Trudeau continues to try to align himself with the European warmongers. I'm sure that's going to end well for Canada. Maxime, thank you for being a voice of reason up there. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. We got a lot of Canadian viewers watching right now. Where do you guys stand on this? I mean, where do you guys come down on this alignment with Europe and sending more money to Ukraine? I don't see any daylight at all between Pierre Poilievre on this question and Justin Trudeau. More money, more weapons. We want Ukraine to regain its territory, so continue war against Russia. How's that going to end for the Canadian people? Like, I always wonder when I hear that kind of a stance from somebody like Pierre Poilievre, like who's got money in his pocket? I mean, how do you come to that kind of a decision? It's madness to me. I know how the corrupt Washington, D.C. works and how money flows in that direction. So when I hear these warmongers in Washington, D.C., I know exactly why they're speaking that way. They're like little puppets because I know who's funding them in their back pocket. All right, we've got more news to get to here. We're going to talk about Doge. We're going to talk about this government waste in a second because the Doge Committee has just uncovered an enormous amount of additional waste, fraud, and abuse. And guess what? Tied directly to President Biden's crime family. And how are they using USAID to cover up their own crimes in Ukraine? We're going to talk about that and some of the other findings that they just found at the DOD. We're going to talk about that in a second. Okay, so we've got more news we're going to talk about here, and I want to talk about what is going on in Washington, D.C. Well, looky here. Doge has uncovered even more wasteful spending, including $80 million for DEI programs at the Department of Defense. Were you happy that you were paying for DEI programs at the DOD? I'm sure you were. But it's worse than that. Let's let Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene explain what they found at the Biden crime family using USAID money. Watch.
And this committee, based on this hearing and witness testimonies, will consider recommending investigations and criminal referrals. When Joe Biden was president, his son Hunter was on the board of a Ukrainian energy company called Burisma. The prosecutor general of Ukraine at the time, Viktor Shokin, was investigating Burisma for corruption. Biden threatened, and it's on video, to withhold $1 billion of USAID grant to Ukraine if Shokin wasn't fired. Mr. Primorak, is USAID supposed to be used as leverage by a president to protect his son?
No, we call that corruption.
No, we call that corruption. And around here, we call that corruption as well. So in other words, then Vice President Joe Biden used $1 billion of USAID funds as leverage to shield his family from accountability. Remarkable how these NGOs operate, too. You can get away with it because no one's tracking it in Washington until now. We have Representative Eric Burleson. He's a Republican congressman from Missouri. He's a member of the House Doge subcommittee, and they are on it. And they are tracking all of this waste, fraud, and abuse. Finally, in Washington, we have members of Congress that are doing this. I'm thrilled about it. And Representative Burleson joins us now. Nice to have you on the show. Welcome to the show.
It's great to be on. I've been a fan for quite some time.
Well, likewise, and we're thrilled what you guys are doing. So just take maybe the audience through, because we keep getting some of these big headlines, from Elon Musk when he posts something on X, and we kind of hear about some of the things. What have been some of the most jaw-dropping things that you guys have uncovered over the past week since we've been focused on Zelensky groveling in the White House?
one of the most jaw-dropping things, we had a hearing where we were investigating some of the misuse of money within the National Institute of Health, and determined that there was a program where we had federal government workers who were illegally flying to China, purchasing dog meat and cat meat, and then flying back and feeding it to cats and dogs.
What?
It's a sick, twisted program. Yes. We spent a lot of money, taxpayer dollars, to basically force dogs and cats to be cannibals. And I don't know how that benefits the American people one bit. So look, at the end of the day, it's weird, it's twisted, but there are so many other examples within, the USAID program, as has been mentioned and widely publicized, about misuse of funds. And, I just got back from a trip to London for the ART conference, which is Jordan Peterson's organization. It's basically a response to the World Economic Forum. And when I was there, I met with a lot of leaders from around the Western world. And you know what they said? They said the United States, through its programs like USAID, was bribing their countries to adopt the most leftist, anti-Christian, anti-God programs possible. You have countries that don't support abortion, and yet we're telling them, you're not going to get this money unless you have Planned Parenthood in your country. We have countries that don't support transgender, whatever transgender movement it is of the day, and yet we're sending money saying this is only if you're going to have a drag show in your country. So we were basically not just exporting the failed part of the American culture. Really, we were bribing other countries to adopt our radical leftist ideas.
Well, of course, we hear from liberals who are upset about it on social media. You hear from Elizabeth Warren and others who are crying in their Cheerios about how, cutting off USAID, we're not feeding poor children around the world. Like, that's the only thing they focus on, is that we may have been like helping certain people in Uganda get clean drinking water, right? But they're ignoring all of the waste, fraud, and abuse. And now we have this bombshell about the Biden crime family using $1 billion of USAID funds to leverage, basically shield his family from accountability. Can you explain more about what you guys uncovered here?
Well, it's not new, but basically when Burisma, when Hunter was working for Burisma and they were being investigated, Joe Biden came in and threatened the $1 billion in aid, and that was widely, he famously said, and what was he said, son of a gun, they fired the guy, right? So this is why this program has been a tool that has been misused by the Democratic Party for a long time. And I think the fact that they're squealing so loud about this program being cut indicates that this is a benefit for them that they don't want to lose should they come back into power. And the other thing we're learning is that you can't throw a rock in this town without hitting a nonprofit that's got some family member of a Democrat that is on the board for, that's receiving some of these funds.
Well, that's what I was going to get to. You're right about the $1 billion piece, using his leverage to get that prosecutor off of his son's back, basically, in Ukraine. That's not new news. But I think what is new news is that this USAID and through these NGOs has been like a money laundering operation. So I know people throw that around. Oh, it's a massive money laundering operation. But you guys have found evidence of that.
Yeah, you're seeing that you've got a lot of people that are politically well connected to family members who are, sitting members of Congress, and or people that are connected to the former White House that were sitting at the right position on the right organization that received sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars in money from USAID. And so that's what this town has been funding. It's the inner culture, the echo chamber of this town, the leftist echo chamber for quite some time. And that's why the it's over. The partying is over. The lights are coming on, and we're seeing all of the rats scurry and the cockroaches scurry in different directions.
How much of this have you think you uncovered? 1%, 10%, 50% of the waste, fraud, and abuse? Are you guys just scratching the surface?
I think right now we're scratching the surface. I really think there's quite a bit. There's quite a bit more. And so I think when we get to some of the major spending programs, within Medicaid, I think that Medicaid, we're going to find tons and tons of fraud within Medicaid. I think we're going to find a lot of misuse, maybe not fraud, but just a lot of poor money management with our Department of Defense, sadly. I think we should have a strong military. That should be one of the few things that the United States does well, is have the strongest military on the planet. And you know what? When we are just throwing money at an institution and not demanding results, and we're not keeping them accountable, they can't pass audits. They haven't passed audits for almost a decade. Then they're not serving the interests of the American people, and we need to come in and bring fiscal responsibility to even a department that we love and hold very near to and dear to our hearts, which is the Department of Defense.
I couldn't agree with you more. Gone on back on my days when I was on Fox and Friends, and I would get on the air and I would rail against the massive bloat that's been in the Department of Defense. And then had my old co-host Pete Hegseth, who's now the Secretary of Defense, saying we need to have this department be accountable to the American people. We need to be able to make sure that we know where every dollar is going and how American taxpayers are funding the military. So I think you're spot on with that. Like, if we know where that money's going, we can feel a little better about how it's being spent. Right now, we have no idea, frankly, how that money's being spent. And I'll get you out of here on this, Congressman, which is my biggest fear is that we're playing, that game where you, like the hide the shell game, where you put something under a shell and you move it around the board a little bit. So Doge is doing amazing work, and we're thrilled about what the work is. But then on the other hand, now you've got members of Congress who now we're all being distracted by Doge. They go right back to their spending habits in Washington, and they're like, "Hey, the American people got this nice little buffet going of Doge, but you know what? Let's keep massively spending in Washington D.C. while they're all distracted with Doge." Is that your fear?
It's not fear, it's the reality. This is the reality of Congress. And it's, the Democratic Party does not have a monopoly on the swamp. There are Republicans that are part of the swamp too. And so, and it's unfortunate, but it's true. And there are Republicans in this Congress that have fought us fiscal hawks and budget conservatives for at least the 2 years I've been in office. I was really shocked and surprised to see how many people are going to fight you on every budget cut you could possibly imagine, even the most egregious ones. The USAID program, for example, Eli Crane brought up an amendment last year. I voted for it to cut all these wasteful programs within USAID. And maybe 30, 50 Republicans joined with Democrats to kill that amendment. So we've got a problem. In fact, whenever I met with Elon Musk, and not to name drop, but one of the biggest honors in the world is being able to meet people like Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Having dinner with them, I just had one quick moment, and I said, you cannot trust this Congress to fix the problems. You have to go after them and demonstrate the courage and force them to adopt it. And that's what they're doing. I love it, because this Congress is the same Congress that got us $36 trillion in debt, Republican or Democrat, right? They've all been pushing up the debt and wasting taxpayer dollars. And so you cannot rely on Congress to suddenly, have a moment of clarity. They need a backbone, and they need the American people to hold their feet to the fire if this town is going to change.
Well, thank you for having a backbone, and thank you for standing up for the American people and the people of Missouri, and thank you for pushing to get these cuts through, because the American people have had it. We need more people like you in Congress who are willing to say the hard truths. So I think I speak for my audience in that. Thank you for what you're doing there. Again, we need more people like you, and I think Doge, if anything, is shining a light on these cockroaches And then they have, then members of Congress will go back to their town hall meetings and they'll meet with people in their districts and they'll say, how did you ever allow this stuff to get pushed through? And American people have had it. I think they're sick and tired of this stuff. So thank you for what you're doing.
If I have just one quick moment, there's some interesting stuff going on with this CR that's getting ready to be passed, the continuing resolution. And normally I would vote, all day long against every CR. The Trump administration is asking us to give him some room here, some runway. And so just it's an interesting dynamic. I just wanted to let people know that that's what's coming up on the horizon.
Yeah. We've been watching this closely. I know, and you have members like Congressman Massey, who's been pushing against big pieces of this. And so, it's like you're voting on the future growth, the future hope of all of this. And I know the Trump administration has been calling up members and telling them, hey, you got to vote for this, you got to vote for this, you got to vote for this. So we're going to see how all this unfolds in Washington. But thank you for what you're doing. And thank you for shining a light on this, Congressman. We appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you. Well, I mean, it's unbelievable. So that again, I love what he said there. It's just that's the reality. It's not just a shell game where we're being distracted by it. It is a reality, and you have these members of Congress who they're so addicted to the lobbying and the spending and the amount of influence that gets peddled in Washington. So it's very, very difficult for them to cut it off. So, oh man, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this CR. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens tonight. President Trump going to be addressing the joint session of Congress tonight. We were going to be here live covering that for you tonight with a special edition. So if you're going to watch it tonight, please watch it with us. We'll have live reaction to it here at Redacted, and we'll get some snacks. We'll get some drinks, we'll hang out, and we'll have a little fun tonight. Don't watch it on the mainstream media, please. Whatever you do, stop giving them your time, attention. Hopefully you guys don't watch stuff like CNN or MSNBC or the mainstream media anymore. We hope that you don't. And by the way, I just want to get something off my chest. I'm a little bothered by this, and it sounds like I have my feelings hurt or anything, but I'm just a little bothered by, have you noticed, I'm just putting this out there. I was speaking to a member of Congress today about this off camera. And have you noticed that the only place right now that cabinet members from the Trump administration are doing interviews, have you noticed? The only place you're going to see them on television? I find it very interesting. That's all I'm just going to say about that. And, we got all this love about, independent media, you are the media, all of this stuff. And now the only place you see interviews is one place right now, one messaging place. And I just find it very, very interesting. Yep. A lot of people in the chat are getting the correct answer. Look, there was all this like massive embracing of like alternative media and, non-mainstream media anymore. And then like now after the election, it's very, very interesting. I don't know. It's very interesting.
Yeah, we never got invited into the press room, did we? We didn't.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You bring up a great point. So the White House press corps whole thing, right? So we're going to invite alternative media, independent media that are not like us. We have a small team. We've got 5 people on our team here, and we're not paid for by any billionaires, any pharmaceutical companies, any lobbying efforts, anything like that. And so they talked about going to the White House press room. You go in the White House press corps. That's great. You can ask a question of Caroline Leavitt once in a while. You get your hand raised. You can ask a question. That's great. Bravo. I applaud that. But when it comes to asking tough questions of members of the cabinet, I'd love to have Pam Bondi on the show here. I have a lot of questions. I'd love to ask Tom Holman, Border Czar. I have a lot of questions. I'd love to talk to RFK Jr. I have a lot of questions. So I'm just hoping that the lockdown on interviews right now is not limited to one news organization, which it currently is over the past month. So I hope that opens up. And if it doesn't, I'm going to be raising that alarm with a number of people, and I'm going to bring it up a lot more until that happens, because I think they owe it to the American people to have interviews with independent media that aren't controlled by one media group. right now. So I'm just going to say that. Okay, tonight, join us live for our special coverage tonight of Trump's special address to Congress. We also have our daily newsletter. It's totally free. And if you sign up for it, you'll receive the newsletter first thing in the morning over your cup of coffee. Just go to redacted.inc, click on the sign up for our free newsletter right there, and then you'll receive a welcome email. So you just have to confirm it. It might go to your spam folder. Gmail labels us as dangerous. So look in your dangerous folder and just hit confirm. And then tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning, we'll have a full recount and post-mortem of President Trump's speech tonight and other big news of the evening as well. So redacted.inc is the place to go. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And I really appreciate it. Again, Natalie had to step out because we had this weird bus thing this week. She had to go pick up the kids and we had a bit of a snowstorm. So she had to duck out here at the end of the show. But much love to all of you guys. We'll see you back here tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern time for our special coverage of President Trump's address to Congress tonight. Have a great afternoon.